morning, everybody, and welcome to the second day of the Huawei 5G training course. With me today, I've got Desiree Nieuwhout as part of our team, and then we also have representation from the DCA. First of all, I just want to make an apology for Juanita. She will not be able to join us today since she has to chair the Global Alliance meeting. But we're very excited. We're very fortunate to have you here with us today. So I'll be leading the event, and I will also be presenting to you today. So just in terms of where we are currently, is that we are on day number 2 of our training sessions that is planned for the entire week. So yesterday we had a fantastic session by Dr. Bello Musa, which gave us an introduction around 5G technologies and the industry progress, etc., etc. So for me today, I'm going to give you a high-level overview. We're going to touch on a number of subjects relating to 5G. We will also be looking at the concerns around EMF and some of the fake news that we have out there that we as an industry need to address because it's really harming the industry in various ways. So I'm just quickly going to switch screens. You are more than welcome to pose your questions in the Q&A section, which we will then look at after I've completed my session for today. Then we will attend to all of your questions. Again, from Digital Council Africa and from Huawei Technologies, we thank you for this opportunity to be able to speak to our stakeholders and to share with you our insights and our knowledge in this area. I'm going to also stop my video so that you are focused on the slides that we're discussing. And we all look forward to this session. Thank you. Right, so when we look at 5G on a high level, there's quite a number of things that we need to look at. So just quickly, a summary around myself. I've been in the industry for more than 30 years. I've been with Huawei Technologies going for year number 13, if I'm not mistaken. So I've had quite a big exposure in Africa. I've had exposure in the Middle East and then also in South Africa relating to various sectors of telecommunications and technologies. And I'm currently in the portfolio of a senior strategy consultant with Huawei Southern Africa region. So we start off with a very basic understanding around what is 5G and what does it actually mean to us. So I'm going to latch onto what Dr. Musa shared yesterday. So when we look at the differences from LTE to 5G, there's a big jump in terms of efficiency of capabilities, and you can see as an example over here, latency, throughputs are increased, connectivity per square kilometer, the connection availability when we are mobile, and it also brings new and exciting things to the fore from a network perspective, like when we look at architecture, it will allow us what we refer to as network slicing. So I'm going to touch on some of these aspects in some form or another. And some of them we will go into more detail later during the week. But overall, this is what I just want to bring home to you. And it's all around, the ITU recommendations that were set, that everybody's working towards to. So it's about that enhanced mobile broadband capabilities of 10 gigabits per second, the massive machine type communications, which will allow us that 1 million connections per square kilometer, and then the ultra reliable low latency capabilities for mission critical services. As Dr. Musa explained yesterday, there's a phased approach that will be predominantly utilized by operators and network providers that we need to understand this. It's just not as simple as just flicking a switch and we've got all of these capabilities. So some of them will mature as the networks progress and as the networks evolve towards these capabilities. All right. Enhanced mobile broadband capabilities is one of the exciting new ones that we see immediate responses happening in terms of that the consumers are just latching onto this. So video plays a very, very important part of that. Where, tactile internet, we see there's early adoptions happening there. 4K, 8K, we know that's happening big time. Sports stadiums, broadcasting, holographic projections, all of these things now are becoming a reality, and people are starting to enjoy it as the services are rolled out. Augmented reality and virtual reality also goes without say. There's massive opportunities within those segments and adoptions that are taking place. Those that are gamers, the next generation gaming platforms have become available. So if you've got a PS5 or the new Xbox, already you are starting to get an idea of what this will offer us. A lot of it is happening in the cloud, and this is a big, big step for us moving towards full 5G. 5G will also then bring what we call as fixed wireless access, of FWA, as Dr. Musa explained yesterday as well. There was an immense uptake. There is an immense uptake in various countries where we've seen, because of what the broadband then capabilities allow us to do. So it's about the fixed wireless access capabilities in those areas where we are really struggling to get fiber in place and to get the type of connections and speeds that we would like. We see that that is an early adopter, and we've got huge successes in that. It also brings enhanced home capabilities when you look at smart homes and the connectivity of smart homes and all of these things. And then the ecosystems, the entire ecosystems, when we look at home management, home security, entertainment, automation, and health. Now, I think especially now during the time and the challenges that we have with COVID-19, it's very clear to us in all of the research and studies and what the real world is showing us that the world as we used to know it have changed significantly, where the home now becomes the central point of not only my working from home capabilities that ensures that continuity for businesses, etc., but also in terms of entertainment and the rest of it. If you've got kids, we need to ensure that they can continue education wherever they are. And again, 5G is a technology that will bring incredible benefits and ease of use and applications towards these different environments. All right. Against COVID itself, we've seen from China, there's a number of cases that I've got here from China, that where the 5G as a technology actually helps immensely in fighting and containing the virus and everything that goes with the COVID-19. So we see 5G bring remote consultation capabilities to the fore. There's 5G ambulances that we call, where during the process of transporting the patient, there's actually sensors and devices that are connected to the patient, and the data is relayed in real time to the hospital in waiting, so to speak. So that the moment when the patient arrives, they already know exactly what certain conditions of the patient is. So it's much more effective in that sense in then attending to the patient. Remote diagnosis have been implemented with great success. We've got mobility trolleys, what they refer to, where a trolley is sent to patients in isolation. So we remove that risk of the medical personnel in actually having to speak to the patient directly in this scenario. So it's got pill dispensers and all sorts of other applications that they can utilize it for. Unmanned vehicles are utilized to spray certain areas and fumigate them. We've got non-contact temperature detection capabilities, which are very accurate. There's medical robotics that have come to the fore. Again, that reduces the risk of infection, etc. And then we also have mobile detection vehicles that goes into certain area then to assist with the pandemic. So when it comes to the cases that I'm discussing today, I'm just going through them very briefly on a high level. The second presentation that I'm going to do on Thursday, I will give you more detail and insight into some of these things. So we just want to give you an overall view and understanding of the capabilities and the value that 5G then brings to the environment. Right. when we look at tourism as an example, and again now certain industries have been in lockdown, and tourism were hit very hard in terms of the lockdowns. But with 5G again as a technology, we can enable remote connectivity and capabilities that could stimulate that industry again, and try and retain some of the value that they used to give to customers. We've partnered as Huawei with China Telecom, where we've seen now, we've actually installed 5G sites on the base stations of Mount Everest. And this is something that is just incredible to enjoy. I actually shared the experience with my wife looking at the sunset and the sunrise on Mount Everest. I'm too old these days to try and do these type of things, and to climb mountains. So very excited being able remotely from my home by means of connectivity to be able to enjoy these types of experiences. And then safari experiences, just think in terms of our tourism industry with the safaris that we offer with the Kruger National Park, etc., where we can start to adopt these type of solutions and experiences by means of 5G as a technology, and then bring it to the customers to enjoy. Right. We have, sorry, let me just go back one. I see I've got a little bit of a delay over here. So we've got enabling of factory and automation. Yeah, I've got some examples of a port where you can see there's only the bed, there's no cab, where everything is done by means of 5G and AI. If you look at the container piling, you've got intelligent gantry operations where the human, again, the risk is removed because this can be a dangerous environment and it can be done remotely. You've got auto pooling pilots, all of these things, again, the technology can be used to effectively bring solutions. Here we've got some proposals where we've been working very closely with Kenya on solutions around chemical factories. You look at advanced skills requirement, and then also some port automation that we are recommending to them over there. All right. We also then, if you look in terms of AR-based assembly and remote assistance capabilities, there's a whole new world and opening up in terms of training, assembly, manufacturing, even fault finding, where we can use augmented reality as a mechanism in a real-time environment to actually assist with these type of things. Remote control applications, warehouse forklift capabilities, port containers, as I've said, and then in the mining industry. Now, interesting enough, we've got reports from a number of mines in China where during the COVID pandemic, that the operators of the heavy machinery were actually then working from home. So the mine then installed the screen to them with the seats, etc. And by means of 5G technology, again, that continuity is established to ensure that that again the mining can stay operational during these trying times that they were facing. Right. So when we look at key technologies, how is it possible for us to do things? What happened? You know, all of a sudden we were all okay with what we had, but we've pushed the envelope to an absolutely new dimensions. Now, I just would like to mention as well that while we, as an industry leader, we have spent in excess of $1 billion in research and development. We've actually started with 5G research and development as early as 2009. And we have, as well, we in various centers around the world, we've got more than 89,000 research and development engineers. Not all of them obviously focusing on 5G as a technology. We've got other segments as well, but 5G as a technology is very, very important to us. And we are making sure that we will remain one of the leaders in the world when it comes to this. So it's all a question of just finding better, more efficient ways to do what we used to do in the past. And we adopt new technologies and mechanisms like massive MIMO, polar encoding. We look at orthogonal frequency division multiplexing capabilities. We look at multiple access capabilities. All of these things that we bring together that ultimately brings that real world value to the fore, right? So if we look at massive MIMO as an example, now we're very, very intelligent in terms that the beam itself actually predefines the direction and what the user is going to consume, and then we align accordingly. So there's a dynamic adjustment of beam forming that forms place, which is an incredible technology in itself. So an easy way to explain it is let's say when we look at multiple users, we can say maybe the blue beams that we have over here is for video content, the green could be for WhatsApp, and the red could be for voice. So then the bandwidth is dynamically assigned to the user requirements. So your spectrum utilization is much, much more efficient than what it used to be in the past. And as Dr. Musa explained yesterday as well, where, for instance, if I download an HD movie, then where it used to take a couple of hours, this can happen in a couple of minutes or seconds, depending on the size of these files. So we've seen immense progress in terms of how the technology effectively utilizes what is available to it. And this is a very, very important thing that we need to know of. Right. There's also talk when you talk about the industry, there's talk about a standalone versus a non-standalone network capabilities. Now, the simplest way to explain this to you is if I look at standalone 4G, I've got an evolved packet core with the LTE capabilities. When I evolve to a non-standalone 5G network, basically what happens is my new radio technology latches onto my existing standalone network. All right. And that is why it means then it's a non-standalone 5G environment. Over time, the networks will evolve to standalone capabilities, which then will allow us obviously to do so much more because we don't have to deal with legacy constraints. Keep in mind that most of the operators out there will use an evolutionary path and a plan from standalone 4G to non-standalone 5G to standalone 5G. There are few networks around the world which have the benefit and the capability to actually kick off as a standalone network. And one of those networks we are fortunate to have in South Africa is RAIN. We work very closely with RAIN, and they've adopted a standalone technology because they did not have to worry about the legacy networks and challenges. So that could be a good start. And we've seen the impact that they've had in the industry. They were out of the blocks very quickly, and they're picking the fruits of that capability that they can have. But we also need to understand that spectrum is a very important factor that needs to be considered in terms of the capabilities that the network will allow us. Right. So on a more technical scale, this is what it looks like. We need to understand that a non-standalone network will give us the enhanced mobile broadband capabilities that I talked about earlier. If we want the full 5G portfolio of capabilities in terms of ultra-reliable low network capabilities and the massive machine type communication capabilities with network slicing, then ultimately that would be in a standalone environment. The reality and the fact is, especially when we look at Africa, is that LTE and 5G will coexist for many, many years. As the networks are built out and they progress and they evolve, in some instances there will be handovers that take place, but in a number of years' time we should all be able to have standalone capabilities with a full portfolio of products available. All right. If we look at the integrated deployment capabilities, we had to bring new and innovative mechanisms to deploy the networks. Now, an example with Huawei is we've got what we call a co-deployment baseband unit, where effectively 4G and 5G technologies can be deployed within the same chassis. We understand the concerns from the networks that they've spent hundreds and millions of dollars in some cases, and those capital investments need to be protected for as long as possible. So Huawei, as a trusted partner, provides an evolutionary path that allows them then to evolve where they need to be ultimately in the long run. And then also in terms of the footprint, the sizes of the antenna units, the integration of the technologies within the units, all of these things are of critical importance to us, and we look at each and every aspect from power consumption to cooling. All of these things are addressed in our technology portfolio. When we look at supporting the vertical industries, I touched on the network slicing capabilities that all of a sudden becomes a reality. So in the past, where consumers only wanted a connection, now customers are starting to demand specific criteria for those connections. And therefore, I need to be able to provide what we call network slicing capabilities to those customers based on the industry required defined capabilities. So here you can see I've got an example of Ultra HD slice voice real-time services and then IoT services. All of these things becomes a reality, and we can see globally how markets are adopting and embracing the new capabilities that the technology brings to the fore. All right. This is just a little bit more technical. That shows me an AR VR slice versus a vehicle to the X and a smart asset slice. Now, when we look at vehicle to the X as an example, we need to understand that ultra reliable low latency is critical for those type of services. The bandwidth requirement may not be as high as the AR or VR solution. And that's why we say it's important that your network needs to be able to support these different slices and requirements on an end-to-end scale in order to effectively roll these services out to your customers at the predefined quality of services criteria and service level agreements. That is very, very important. Right. So when we look, for instance, at video, we can see not only from monitoring, but smartphone, HD, VR, AR, moving towards holographic projections. And as the resolutions go up, then definitely we can see that the bandwidth requirements keeps on moving at an immense rate. I mean, these days we look at self-broadcast capabilities. You just need to speak to your kids if you've got teenagers or youngsters around all of the YouTube stars. So it's not only about the downlink capabilities that the network needs to be able to support, but also the uplink requirements. And as I say, then again, if I stream live from my study in 4K or 8K resolution, then I need to ensure that I've got that ample bandwidth available that supports that capability. Security is another aspect, and there's many questions around security. Huawei is absolutely dedicated. We've got hundreds of millions or billions of dollars that we actually now invest in security, and 4G versus 5G, we see that 5G is much, much more secure than what 4G was in the past. Now, that doesn't mean that 4G never was secure. As a vendor, we have to comply to all international standards, regulations, and protocols in ensuring that it is secure. The vendor and the operators, with all of the other stakeholders, corporately have a very important role to play to mitigate all of the risks involved. Now, just to show you the differences here, 4G was based on a 128-bit cryptographic algorithm. That has evolved to 256-bit algorithm. If you look at privacy protection, encryption capabilities, the protection between PLMNS, all of these things have been advanced from 4G to 5G, and then the air interface security as well. Is much, much more secure. There are ample documentation and white papers available. Huawei are certifying, as I said, according to international standards and regulations, to adhere to all of these security requirements. Right, now the progress, where are we in terms of progress? Now we need to understand that the standardization status is a moving target. It keeps on evolving. Certain releases have been frozen or set, which then allows the capability and the ability to push to market once standardization, everything has been finalized on a global scale, and that is very, very important for us. So we align again to all international standards, requirement, regulations. We chair and sit on many of the international bodies that we then guide as well and support in terms of what the market allows. So we are currently moving towards, as we can see over here, release 17, moving towards 2020 Q1. My colleague Cesar from Spain, which will do the session tomorrow, is going to give you much more insight into this slide than what I can. But as you can see, we are definitely moving ahead, and we also need to ensure that our technology supports what the future then holds. And it's very critical that we are part of these standardization processes. Right, the development globally, we can see that 3.5, 2.6, and 2.3 gigahertz have become the primary bands. You can see many countries have released. Many countries are planning for release. We have got more than 130 mobile network operators in 40 plus countries that have already switched on 5G in one form or another. So it goes without saying, 5G is here, it's here to stay, it's evolving, it's being switched on. People are starting to enjoy the services. Again, Cesar will give some more insight tomorrow around the specific spectrum requirements. We have a number of challenges in South Africa in terms of the digital dividend not being available as yet, although the plans have been set in motion. So we're very hopeful. We're waiting in anticipation around the auctions that needs to take place for the spectrum, because that is a very important part of the 5G technology and capabilities that will allow us to deliver ultimately on those services. Because again, it's horses for courses in terms of bandwidth capability and then reach as well, and that's why it's important that the spectrum regulators assign the spectrum in such a way that it is they create a competitive environment for all to be able to participate in effectively. All right, but for those of you that are focused on spectrum, please make sure that you join tomorrow's session. Our expert from Spain for Africa, Cesar, will go into depth around spectrum requirements and the importance of spectrum. Right, strategy and policies. It goes without saying, there's a number of white papers, policies, strategies available out there from the GSMA, from the ITU, around the importance of 5G and the contribution that 5G will bring to the economy. As you can see, we've got a lot of big players here that have put money in and understand the importance of this. You've got the USA, Korea, Japan, France, Germany, UK as early adopters. They've identified employment, as you can see, vast employment capabilities that the technology will bring to the fore. There are actually new industries that are developing and becomes available because of what 5G as a technology will allow us to do. I'm very excited. I mean, I love technology. I've been in the technology field now for more than 30 years. But when I look at the young people of today and I look at what the future holds, I get super excited, because there are so many things that we haven't even thought of as yet that will become a reality in their lifetimes. And this is very exciting to us. So yes, again, 5G to business is the best option for industry digitalization. So you can see again, digital economies. There's all of the countries are looking at ways now to, because of what COVID-19 has done, to stimulate the economies, to stimulate the GDP growth. How are we going to do this? And to do it without our technology will just not work at all. These are the things that we see that can stimulate and enhance the specific environments within your economy. And here's just a little bit of a comparison in terms of mobility, the low latency ultra reliable bandwidth, end-to-end reliability, security, indoor positioning, and cost. And we can see that 5G comes out as the clear winner. Many countries have adopted now 5G as a critical pillar within their national strategies. We've got Germany, United States, China, we've got the UK. There's been a phenomenal growth in Asia. If you look at South Korea, Singapore, all of these places now are adopting it at an incredible rate and deploying it, because they've already had a taste of the difference that 5G as a technology is making to the livelihood and to the economy of its people. All right, but how do we do it? So there's so much that we need to look at all of these things. How do we actually sit down and make a plan? So what we've seen is, and again, there's various white papers, industry insights available that will allow you to focus then again on the low-hanging fruit first. And this is what we see over here, is that in terms of information, media, and telecommunication, they're doing very well. So as we've said, the enhanced mobile broadband capabilities, which 5G brings to the play, will bring a lot to the fore. And then the massive IoT capabilities with the ultra reliable low latency capabilities then will follow as the networks evolve. Okay, so how do I tie that into industry? It's actually very simple. What they've done over here, IHS, is they've broken it down into the industries, and then the three critical segments that 5G allows, and then you just gauge them from no impact to high impact, and this is where we can see then, all right, where do we need to go first? So it's critical that you understand your country, your economy, the production capabilities in various sectors. Where do we go? Where will we see the highest impact? Now, when I look at South Africa, tourism is one of our big ones, but unfortunately, due to COVID, we've got a problem. So how do we do that? Again, with the streaming capabilities, augmented reality, virtual reality capabilities, that is something that could be considered. If we look at the mining industry as an example, again, there's a lot that can be done in the mining industry that 5G capabilities will allow. Fishing, and then government service as well. When we look at social services, you look at hospital, medical services, maybe forms of remote diagnosis, that becomes a reality due to maybe rural areas. All of these things can be looked at. Now, again, Huawei as a trusted partner and advisor are more than willing to participate and help and guide where need be. We are obviously involved and in talks with all of the operators and giving them the guidance where need be. The government has a very, very important role to play. As far as possible, we are engaging as far and wide as we can in educating and equipping people to make the right decisions for a better future for all. And that's also why we are part of the Digital Council Africa, to ensure that we speak with the right stakeholders. And again, I want to thank them for this opportunity to be able to present to you today on this. So it's about matching the industry requirement in any scenario. So it's important to understand then, what are the industry requirements? What is the scenario specific? And what is the capabilities that the networks have to be able to deliver on? To do that. Mobile inspection, I just see over here on the right hand side. I haven't even touched on mobile inspection. I'll touch more on that on Thursday, in the Thursday session, where we can use drone as solutions to combat crime. In Saudi Arabia, they utilize drones to do inspections on the oil pipelines or on the power pylons. All of these things, again, where we can remove the risk and we can bring value. We can do things much more efficient and effectively than what we used to do in the past. All right. On the infrastructure side, fit for purposes. Yes, I've touched on this a little bit. So easy deployment, the form factor, how do we deploy it? Where do we need cooperation? Move away from traditional towers. Where can we maybe look at poles? And there's all sorts of cooperation mechanisms that countries are looking at, and also that they are putting into policy in terms of pre-provisioning and rapid deployment, where operators can actually cooperate together and start to share infrastructure. So there's huge cost savings in terms of capex that are rolled out, that now can be effectively used to build more networks or to take our networks deeper into the rural areas. So yes, many ways that we are looking at to stimulate cooperation, and then obviously the technology needs to be able to support all of this. Again, form factors, as I've said, are being brought down, power consumption is being brought down, etc. Right, and here I've got an example of a number of countries, and as you can see, as early as 2018, 2017, they've put certain things in place in the US, UK, Germany, and Korea. If you look at Germany as an example, where traffic lights, traffic signs, street furniture, crash barriers, manhole covers, all of these infrastructures that used to have no intelligence and no value, now all of a sudden we can utilize in ensuring that we can effectively cover and penetrate the population in terms of what the technology allows. All right, so South Africa as well, there's a number of initiatives. For IR, there's also a rapid deployment mechanisms that government is looking at, and we're very happy to see that the government is looking at this mechanism and adopting some of the strategies that have been already adopted on an international scale. So as I've said, a lamppost now all of a sudden becomes something that I can monetize, because I can use it as an antenna. I can even put live advertisements on it. I can stream video to it. All of these things now become a reality, you know, where in the past it just used to be a pole. Now all of a sudden there's real value, and local councils and also metros now can use this as a source to generate a form of income in leasing agreements to operators, cooperation models again with operators. So this again brings us back to pre-provisioning, rapid deployment, and the sharing of infrastructure capabilities that will allow us to get the networks where it needs to be. All right, so I have to give credit to Dr. Musa for this slide, where we can see technology and harmony in harmony with nature, and that's what it's about. There's many things out there, fake news that are proliferating at the speed of light, which is just creating a lot of concern. So we're going to look at some of those aspects today. Again, this is just on a very high level, and I'm going to try and direct you to the sources where you can do your own research and find some more information around this. Now, man, as we know, is fearful when it comes to change. And this is something that has come through the ages. When the first steam engine came out, they said, it's a monster, stay away. When the aircraft was invented, people said, no way you can fly. We were made to stay on the ground. Please, people, we are going to fall from the sky. And we know how that changed the world. Vaccinations, I mean, there were rumors that people will grow horns in 1796 when vaccines was invented. And I've had all my shots, well, except from COVID-19 at this stage, but I still have to grow horns. I haven't seen mine yet. So coronavirus and the relationship to 5G, we know that the first coronavirus was actually appeared more than 80 years ago. So yeah, okay, now I don't know about you, but I'm quite sure we had no 5G when I was growing up. So that one is out of the door. And then also we need to be able to differentiate as the industry between ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. We know that the spectrum and the frequencies that we use, the radio spectrum and microwave frequencies that we see over here, all falls within the non-ionizing scope. And this was confirmed by the International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation and Protection. You can go online, you can download it. ICASA has also released a document where they endorse the findings. And realistically, a lot of the spectrum that we are going to utilize for 5G have been utilized in other ways and forms as well. So, yeah, what can I say? Then in South Africa, we saw, interestingly enough, that even my broadband did an independent investigation around where they did the actual test measurements, even against the head of a person. And the fact of the matter is that the signal received on the handsets itself is below what industry acceptable standards are. So if you look at what we have over here, examples around microwave ovens and hair dryers that have more than that. So yeah, again, if you look at what light bulbs radiate, front lights, etc. So there's a lot of research that have gone into this area to ensure that it is safe for everybody. So there's no relationship between COVID and 5G. I mean, here, more than 200 countries have COVID confirmed with, well, we've got 40 plus now with 5G. So where does 5G then come from in the other countries? All right. Again, the reutilization of the same, effectively the same spectrum bands. And I showed you how the technology is used in ways and mechanisms to save lives. And I've got many cases in China. And again, I'll share some of these with you on Thursday. They actually also used it as a mechanism to see what was happening, where China built 2 hospitals in a record-breaking time, in 10 days, if I'm not mistaken, and people were actually could go by means of a 5G network. They could actually go on live and see how these projects were doing and in development. So, yeah. Again, globally, number of studies, as you can see over here, ITU, no scientific basis. IC and IRP, as I've said, no scientific basis. Ofcom, the UK has got some very good information around it. CSIR has released information around it. As you can see over here, United Nations, and even the mainstream media has got some reporting in place. And this is what we also encourage. You can go and have a look on a lot of the operators' websites. They've actually made reference to scientific papers and documentation available that you can go and study. I know that the Digital Council Africa as well has made information available around all of these myths that we have to look at. And that, in a nutshell, is the presentation from me. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to have a look. I see we've got a number of questions from the floor. Right, so from my side, I think, first of all, thank you for your participation and thank you for your time today. Right, so I've got a question here from Dr. Kobus Liebenberg, the perspective on 5G radiation and concerns. I hope we've addressed that. As I've said, there's a number of international studies available, white papers that you can go and have a look at. I've got a 5G rain here in my study with me, and I definitely wouldn't have done that if there were any concerns. But please, it's good that we debate. There's a number of initiatives that the industry is using as well in getting the real information out there and equipping the general public to ensure that we've got all the facts available. 5G in China, we have actually deployed more than 900,000 base stations in China. Now, I just would like you to think about this for a minute. The current rate at which China is deploying 5G is 10,000 sites per week. Now, I think if there was a problem around this, people would have started dying and collapsing all over the show, but it hasn't happened. So, yeah, I think that's enough said on that. On the consumer end, may you please touch on consumer privacy and data ethics? All right, this is from Daniel. All right, let me see if I understand your question correctly. Consumer privacy and data ethics, of course, we have to comply and adhere to all, not only international but local policy regulations, etc., etc. Again, we have to understand that the vendor and the operator together has an important role to play in ensuring that within the technology itself, the mechanisms are available and are developed. Now, it can be as simple as, let's use an example and say, I buy a PC, all right? But ultimately, I use that PC and I put information, I make information available. So the question from a user perspective is, where do I go? And have I actually adopted and implemented the capabilities that allow for that privacy and data protection? So have I utilized a firewall? Do I use password protection? Do I maybe utilize encryption on some folders? And do I install an antivirus? All right. And this is the important thing when it comes around about security and protection, is that there's user responsibilities, there's network responsibilities, and there's vendor responsibilities. And together, this will allow for an end-to-end capable protected environment. All right. So it's important that we understand this, but from an industry and from a vendor perspective, again, we adhere to all international requirements. And there's international bodies that independent bodies that actually test the capabilities then of these technologies from all vendors point of view. So I think if you just go and you just Google a little bit, you can maybe try something like security plugfest type of scenarios, look at the international bodies, because there's applicable certifications that needs to be adopted to all of this. All right, so I hope I've helped you with that one. Then I've got a question around the requirement to modernize OSS and BSS. Absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that have changed from the traditional way to what 5G will bring us. And in terms of that management of these platforms and the capabilities, the services, etc., absolutely, there is something that it has to be addressed. So what I would recommend is, I'm not sure from which industry you are. This is an anonymous question. Speak to your relevant stakeholders. If you need to speak to Huawei, get a hold of us. Speak to the Digital Council Africa if you need to, and then we can assist and we can guide and we can support as and when required. Again, we've got different business groups. I'm from the carrier business group, but we've got an enterprise business group and also a consumer business groups that focus on those specific segments and environments. All right. I've got a question here in terms of spectrum in South Africa. Only 2 mobile operators who buys the spectrum and rent it to the rest of the mobile providers. How does that affect the rollout and usage of 5G? Right. So as I've said around spectrum, it's a very, very important thing. It's a limited resource that needs to be rolled out in a way that creates a competitive environment, not only for the big players, but also for the smaller operators. Okay, so yes, we know as we have the information available from ICASA and the regulator that certain spectrum bands in certain cases are available for all. We've got 1 or 2 operators that have exclusive use of some of the important spectrum. So in many cases, what we see happening in some countries is that some of the spectrum might be taken back by the regulator and then equally distributed. We're not quite clear, exactly 100% clear. We've got some idea of how the 5G auction would happen in South Africa, but we'll have to wait and see, when it happens. But ultimately, you want to make your spectrum affordable. You want to share the spectrum in a way that allows equal opportunity for all network operators to achieve what 5G allows them to achieve. So not only around penetration in terms of distance, because there's different ways that we do rural areas versus the metros and the cities. So there has to be a balance between the spectrum, the type of service, and the area which it is deployed. And again, we were more than willing to participate and recommend, but around spectrum, I urge you, please make yourself available for tomorrow to listen to what Cesar, our expert from Spain, is going to share. All right. Quality of users and user experience. Yes, again, very important. Remember, as I've discussed around the capabilities of network slicing, because the user that utilizes a voice service versus a video service. Now, when I talk video service, I need now also differentiate between HD, standard definition HD, 4K and 8K, and then also VR and AR. So each of those ones within that environment have got a different criteria that needs to be addressed in terms of the speed, the experience, etc., etc. So again, the operators will have to sit down and define and understand exactly what it is that they are going to push to market. Because I cannot push an 8K video service to market, but my network doesn't allow that capability. So it's going to be a game changer. 5G is going to be a game changer for the way in which operators provide services. And this is what we see now happening in other countries, is that you don't buy just a connection anymore, you buy the capability to enjoy a specific service at a specific quality of service. And it's not only quality of service, QoS, it's also QoE. It's the quality of experience that you need to be able to measure on the user side. So that's a very important question, Simon, and yes, they will definitely have to look at that. All right. Lindsay asks, 5G data transmission seems to be more affected by environmental interferences. All right, absolutely right. We need to understand, and this is again brings us back to spectrum behavior, right? And this has been the case for many, many years. I installed my first 2-channel radio systems in the 1990s. I installed microwave networks from the 1990s until I was in a management position. Now, again, depending on how do we decide you have to make a decision around what spectrum is utilized for what type of services, because we know the higher the spectrum, the lower the reach, and you've got some thresholds and certain instances where line of sight is of critical importance, especially if we look at microwave as an example. But we also have now environments where certain spectrums can actually be used in what we call no line of sight or near line of sight capabilities. So these are all very technical terms, highly defined within the spectrum range, and our technologies have to latch onto that to get that maximum capability out of that spectrum. So again, it's horses for courses, as I've said, and that's why it's important that we not only give low spectrum capabilities, let's say sub 1 gigahertz, to the operators, but also higher spectrum available to address those specific needs in specific environments. And absolutely, where your density of people is more and your buildings are higher, all of these things, like in the cities, there's different approaches that we have to adopt in terms of the engineering, the antenna deployment mechanisms, to ensure that everybody has got enough coverage. And this is different than in the countryside. All right. But again, I would like you then, Lindsay, to tune in tomorrow and speak again when Cesar is talking around spectrum and these issues. He'll be able to give you more insight into that. Right. Then spectrum availability. What are the major challenges for 5G adoption and rollout? Okay. So again, it's all about the spectrum. If I don't have the spectrum to utilize in my, let's say, specific network operator company, so I don't have a license to use it, I cannot utilize it effectively, as I've said. So certain spectrum will be wonderful in certain areas, and certain spectrum will not do that well. And that's again why we have to say it's important that we have the right balance and availability equally distributed to ensure that there's an equal playing field for all. And unfortunately, we've seen not very good things happening with auctions where the prices are so high that only the big boys can participate and they buy all the spectrum. But that creates a monopoly. That will never allow for equal services from all operators that ultimately pushes the prices down for the services by the consumer. And that is very, very important. And that's again why we say um, regulators and governments should not see spectrum as a cash cow. All right, they need to look at the long-term benefits. They need to look at the long-term value that spectrum is going to bring to us by means of new verticals, new industries that are stimulated, and then also new opportunities, entrepreneurship, businesses are thriving, which ultimately leads to people having jobs, can pay taxes, can buy, etc., etc. So there's many aspects that needs to be considered. And yeah, so it's not easy. In some countries, it has been a lot easier because they did things differently. But we cannot really blame anybody for this. What I always say is, if we knew what we know today around the importance of spectrum for 5G, if we knew this 10 years ago, we would have done things differently, for sure. Absolutely. I think there's no doubt in my mind that if we can go back 10 years or even 20 years in time and we can allocate spectrum in a way that makes sense for today, we would have done it differently. Horses for courses, but inherently we need to understand that and everybody that works in the industry with spectrum will understand that inherently atmospheric conditions, especially when you look at rain, fog, those type of conditions, luckily not wind, but for some of the others, at certain spectrum levels, it can affect your signal deterioration. Now, again, there's mechanisms that the technology within itself can adopt. There's buffering, and even in some instances, the actual output power can be increased to give us that little bit more effectiveness. So the intelligence within the technologies itself, there has been massive improvements throughout the years when it comes to that. All right. But it
Okay.
will always remain. Yes.
There was a question from Dr. Kobus Liebenberg. To what extent does spectrum availability impact additional 5G equipment requirements and cost of sale to deliver the respective services?
Yeah, that's a that's a very good question, Doctor. Obviously when we develop now, this will come down more when we look at the CPE, uh, the handsets, the actual routers that we utilize. There's obviously a cost component involved with that. That is again why it's important that as vendors we work very closely with the operators and understand which products we can push to market. I mean, it doesn't make sense for me to let's say have a product which is very costly, let's say within the 2.6 gigahertz range, but that spectrum isn't available. So then we will have to look at other ways. There's definitely a cost implication, but ultimately the scale of quantities as the technologies evolve, all of these things help us to bring it down to the point where it actually becomes profitable. And as Dr. Musa also mentioned yesterday, if you look at the handsets in itself, the cost has come down significantly. Yes, you still have a very high premium product available, which cost more than what my first car cost me many years ago. But you also have now 5G capable handsets, which is less than $150. Now, we know that, especially when we look at Africa, there's huge challenges that we have to push that down even further, because it comes down to the adoption rate as well. Now, what we see on a global scale where networks are deployed, unfortunately, most of the countries tend to be higher middle income and high earning countries. But definitely the strategy of adoption from an operator perspective, in most instances, is again to go for your premium customers first to start to generate revenue within those segments. So the same strategy that was adopted with 3G and with LTE. So and there's nobody to blame because of that. It's just a question of how businesses are run, and they need to be profitable, and they want a return on investment as soon as possible. But what we do see is that the penetration and the adoption rate is much quicker than what it used to be with other technologies. And in some instances, Germany, as an example, have prescribed specific licensing conditions to the operators that says, listen, you're not going to do it in the same way. You have to deploy and switch on a certain amount of 5G sites in the rural areas or in areas where we know there's coverage issues before you can do it in the cities. So again, there's mechanisms that we can use to stimulate the penetration and adoption then of 5G as a technology. But we need to be realistic. Again, the associated types of services needs to be considered as well. And this is where we see amazing and big things happening, where specific environments, let's say a mining base out in the rural area, which then can, for that specific plant capabilities or mining capabilities or industry vertical, 5G services can be specifically assigned and adopted within that environment, because it doesn't need to be mobile. It's more a closed campus type environment. But the benefit of 5G as a technology can then be translated into an effective service to that segment. So again, it's the horses for courses scenario, and let's see how we can do it and how we can adopt. And I mean, we're very excited because we're learning a lot as we're going along, and that helps us immensely when we look towards the future, and then ultimately what 6G will bring us. You know, it's going to be there's incredible things happening in so many segments. All right. I've got a question here. Many 5G handsets do not have a 5G chipset installed. Any idea what the cost and benefit of a 5G app is? Yeah, no, that is also a very good question and a very valid question. Unfortunately, we need to realistically understand that many of the handsets available, most of them will over time become redundant. Right? There's a way where we can, when I've got a 5G, now it depends again on the quality of phone that I've got and the limitation of that device, I might still be able to connect onto certain 5G networks at specific frequencies and utilize some of that services, but to an extent. Ultimately, we're realistic that the hardware limitation is going to be the one that's going to stop us. And that's why it's so important for us and for the industry to drive the prices down for the 5G handsets. And again, there's many mechanisms we're looking at and that we're promoting. If you look at Africa as an example, areas that can be focused on is import duties, taxation of these devices, right? Because in many cases, in many countries, taxation actually is just extremely high because it's considered as luxury items. But it's not a luxury item. It's a necessity of the day and the age that we live in, all right? So import duties, taxation, and then when we look at the networks, we look at cooperation models, subsidies, the same as we've done in the past with other devices, all right? But now we can actually extend that subsidy to other areas as well, where and this is what we've seen in South Korea and in some of the other countries, where now the 5G service might be embedded and incorporated into my television set. Now, if you go do some research, you will see that 5G released the first global, Huawei released the first global 5G capable television set. All right. So there's proof of concepts happening in terms of how can we push it? To what extent can we push this technology, and how we can incorporate it? If you look at VR and AR glasses and mechanisms, smart glasses, all of these things, where we can embed a chip and bring the technology to it, and make it happen. There's incredible things happening in this space, and it's exciting. All of these things will stimulate new areas of entertainment, of usage, of intelligence, where we haven't been yet, and you tie this in with artificial intelligence, clarification, etc., and ultimately we will see amazing things happening. So yeah, I share that, but like I say, we have to be realistic that the handsets will only be able to support to a certain extent, and then we will unfortunately have to go and upgrade, whatever the case might be. Okay, I don't see any new additional questions, so I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your participation. Again, I would like to extend an invitation to you to join us tomorrow. We will have a very, very specialized section tomorrow around spectrum and spectrum efficiencies. And we've got our expert, one of our global experts, Cesar Guterres from Spain, who will join us directly from Spain and will share with us. I thank you for your time and your participation. On behalf of Huawei Southern Africa region and of the Digital Council Africa, have a good day, stay warm and stay safe, and we hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.